Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Welcome into the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dougherty, which of course means this is the college football edition of the GSMC Football Podcast. This is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, it's Draft Day Eve, ladies and gentlemen. We are just over 24 hours away from the NFL Draft down in Arlington at Cowboy Stadium, where we're going to see some of our favorite college athletes get chosen, handpicked into the NFL, and we'll figure out which teams are finally going to land on, what the Browns going to do. I've been on the show, but ranting and raving about the Browns, not raving as much, but ranting about the fact that the Browns are likely going to pick Josh Allen, even though we're seeing more reports. Mike Mayock came out yesterday and said, I don't care about all these reports. It's probably still going to be Sam Darnold. It's still going to be Sam Darnold, even though, Sam Darnold definitely gets mixed reviews. The guy throws a lot of interceptions. Is he ready to go right in the NFL? Even Kirk Herbstreit has him below Baker Mayfield as the most NFL-ready quarterback. Baker Mayfield is a bit older, which means, his ceiling could be already closer to being reached, meaning that there's more room to grow for the younger quarterbacks, obviously, because they're younger, more time. But Baker has had more time in college to get those reps in. He was a walk-on twice and won a job twice from guys that were given scholarships. So, the guy is a fighter. The guy is a worker. You got to give him credit for that. So, Baker Mayfield also been talked about for being that number one pick out in Cleveland. You got to think about that as well. So, we'll see what happens. I know there's been a lot of different mock drafts come out. The guy I like from the Athletic out here in the Bay Area is John Middlecoff, works right for the Athletic out in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and he came out with a mock draft saying Josh Allen number one, Josh Allen number one, Sam Darnold 2 to the Giants. Jets actually go with Josh Rosen, and then he actually called it and said the Browns are going to trade that fourth pick, which is exactly what I said they should do. If they're going to take a quarterback number one, trade the fourth pick. Honestly, if they could get a better package, I would trade the first pick. We've gone over this multiple times. Trade the first pick and wait and see if they can get a quarterback with the second pick, or their second pick in that first round, which would be the fourth pick, of course. But John Middlecoff has them trading that fourth pick to the Dolphins, and the Dolphins taking Baker Mayfield. So it's an interesting little dichotomy there. We've seen reports saying Baker's going to go number one to Cleveland. Now we have a guy saying the Dolphins are going to go up and get him. I think if Baker Mayfield had a choice, I think he would go to South Beach versus cold Cleveland, even though maybe, I don't know, if you're looking from a strict football perspective, he'd be a little more focused in Cleveland versus being distracted out with nice sunny beaches in Miami, Florida. But he's a football player. He's going to be paid a lot of money to play quarterback for whatever team decides to call his name on Thursday. That's tomorrow. It's tomorrow, folks. We're there. We're almost there. We're so close. We're so close yet so far from finding out who's going to go where in this whole mumbo jumbo of the first round. This mysterious first round is going to be decided, and the shroud of mystery will be lifted on Thursday, tomorrow, in Dallas. Can't wait. Cannot wait. We'll be having a nice long chat about it on on Friday, likely. Also in the show, we're in a couple, maybe either in the next segment or the segment after. It depends how long I rant about the draft at the beginning of the point. We're going to be talking about some of the overlooked players in the draft, or at least the ones the media are looking. These teams don't overlook much. Their draft boards are very extensive. Their draft boards are researched and vetted and such. So, I mean, the NFL, sometimes they slide, but these guys slide on the draft a little bit, but they're going to get picked. They'll get chosen. So I'll go over some players, guys that start in college that are going to be, they don't want to get overlooked. They're going to get picked, but they don't want to overthink them maybe early in the rounds. So we'll go over some guys that are maybe you've never heard of before, but are very, very solid players and played very well in college and could be guys who make an impact in the NFL. I mean, that's what we always see is some guys like that we'd never heard of. I mean, we had obviously Alvin Kamara last year. I keep saying his name because he went to Tennessee, a big school in the SEC, but they're not a hot team in the SEC right now. Never really been. They've been talked about because they are in the SEC, but not a team that's going to be fighting for a college football playoff position. We had Alvin Kamara go there, and he popped in the NFL quite quickly. Obviously, was in a very nice little system there in New Orleans. But if you're a guy looking for some value off of your team and you want to see, if your team calls the guy's random name, then you'll be like, I know that guy. He went to this school because you listened to my show and you are informed. So that's my job, to inform you. All right. Well, continuing on a little bit more quarterback stuff. Oh, the quarterbacks. Yeah, there's something we're kind of forgetting about. I mean, the fact that there's also Lamar Jackson. I mean, like I said, there was reports yesterday on Monday that the Cleveland Browns wouldn't be remiss from getting Bradley Chubb, Saquon, and then maybe trading back into the first round or going and seeing if Lamar Jackson drops to them in that they'd have the 33rd pick. So the first pick in the third round or the second round for the Browns. If say they can get Lamar there, I don't think he lasts that long. Honestly, there's too many teams that need quarterbacks, and he's a very talented guy. Even though we have reports saying that there was a coach saying that he has no chance of being a quarterback in the NFL. I mean, but the Patriots. The Patriots also looking at him. I mean, they have the 23rd pick. So I mean, there's been reports saying that the league does let him slip back all the way to that 23rd pick. Bill Belichick might snag him, and he'll be able to learn under Tom Brady and Belichick as a quarterback. Lamar Jackson would be a pretty tough task, and he'd be a pretty good quarterback as he would be going along. I mean, the Patriots could be drafting him. He's been linked now to Lamar Jackson. Yeah, definitely been linked to Lamar Jackson. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to go along here. As Lamar, I mean, he threw well in the combine. He did not run his 40, but that's because people were thinking he could be a receiver. People know how fast he can go. But now I'm seeing even more reports from Bleacher Report saying Lamar Jackson could be the biggest bargain of the draft. I mean, especially if he slides. If he slides all the way down to 23, and the Pats pick him up, and he's there for Brady to under the tutelage of Tom Brady and the coaching of Bill Belichick, he could be a guy who could set this league on fire. I mean, the comparison obviously is Michael Vick. We'll see if he lives up to that, but he's definitely got the skills and the speed and the elusiveness to do it. If he's got to be able to have the arm strength. I mean, Michael Vick slung the football and threw lasers across the field. He had a very strong arm, so we'll see. Yeah, I mean, there's even been a line. I mean, there's so much mixed messages from about Lamar Jackson, but even David Shaw, the coach at Stanford, was asked about him, and he's like, "Ask your defensive coordinator if you want to coach against him." I mean, the guy's elusive. The guy's an enigma out there on the field, and he can make people go. I mean, Lamar Jackson did win the Heisman Trophy his sophomore year of college. And then he also put better numbers up his last year, his junior season. He put up better numbers. Won the Heisman the year before, but he won the put up better numbers and was also in contention for another Heisman Trophy this season. So, I mean, Baker won that one, but I think the Heisman Trophy is kind of similar to the NFL MVP. It's what's new out there. It's tough to win too, obviously, unless you're Tim Tebow. But then Tim Tebow's is Tim Tebow. He was a great college. I mean, obviously a great college player. Now he's playing minor league baseball. We'll see how that all works out. But I mean, yeah, you got to remember that Lamar Jackson played very well last year. But now we're seeing obviously all these different conflicting reports. I mean, it's just all these reports are ridiculous. Josh Allen, a lot of guys are saying, "Oh, he's inaccurate. He's this, he's that." I mean, he's got a strong arm. He's got good hand size. Playing in some cold weather, he's going to play in a lot of cold weather games, especially if the Cleveland Browns draft him. John Dorsey believes maybe you can teach that, teach the accuracy, teach the touch as you go along with more reps in the NFL game. Especially with practicing all training camps, all the stuff they do to prepare for the season. But the thing you can't really get over is the fact that he already has a lot of the intangible stuff that are hard to teach and hard to create, and that's arm strength. And obviously he was born with some good hand size that impresses a lot of players. I mean, you see that was the big thing I think that everybody liked about Sam Bradford and all that stuff. They got big hands. Even like Jamarcus Russell, just for an example. Oh, these guys have big hand size, like their hand size. But it means they can get their hand around the football and just sling it far. But you ever watched the Josh Rosen film? The ball flies out of his hand just as easily. I mean, all these guys throw beautiful passes, beautiful ball when it comes to their mechanics of throwing the football. All four of these guys, even Lamar Jackson throws a nice ball. So, pretty much pick your poison when it comes to the Browns. I don't know. I think Baker's honestly the better pick, unless you're really worried about the fact that he's going to get beat up by that cold weather. I mean, yeah, they say that, you play a lot of games in the cold up there in Wyoming, but I mean, I think they play outdoors in Wyoming. If they have an outdoor stadium, then it's fine. But I swear they saw Josh Allen throw his pro day in a dome or in a covered practice facility. So yeah, at least one indoor thing. Wyoming football, do they play outside? I mean, yeah. So they got to. If you play outside, then it is cold up there. So up in Laramie, Wyoming, yeah, you're going to be playing in some cold weather in Cleveland as well. So. Yeah, outdoor stadiums up there in Wyoming, that's not bad. You gotta like the fact that he's already had some experience up in the frigid temperatures. So that's probably a reason why they like him more than a California quarterback. That's the problem. Sam Darnold did throw his pro day in the rain. We went over this in multiple episodes in the past when he had his pro day. But you can't. The more experience in the games in the cold is what John Dorsey likes, and that's why we're seeing a lot of Josh Allen's name all over that first pick. I mean, I would not be surprised whatsoever if Roger Goodell goes on that stage tomorrow in Dallas and says Josh Allen's name first, which means the Giants would get Sam Darnold. Because the thing is, the Giants, they came out and said they love Sam Darnold, but not nobody else. Just so, I mean, I'm speculating. They said they pick one quarterback that you like, and they picked the guy who is being talked about as number one overall. All off season long, ever since his pro day, he's been solidified as number one. Sam Darnold. So the Giants picking at 2 are like, oh, we like him too, but he's not going to be there, so we don't have to pick a quarterback. Oh, yes, you do, Giants. Yes, you do. Now you do, because he's going to be there for you. He's going to be right there for you. And I think the Jets should also. I mean, the Jets, they've already kind of, like I said, they deemed Baker Mayfield their crown prince, but I've seen more and more mock drafts now saying that even though Baker Mayfield is going to be considered to be the number one pick, he might not go number one. Josh Allen might not go number one, and the Jets can be like, okay, Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, which one do we want at 3? Do you want the bigger quarterback that we can bulk up a little bit, or want the smaller quarterback who already is kind of is stocky enough and durable enough and he likes to run around. I don't know. I mean, according to Kirk Herbstreit, Baker Mayfield is the most NFL-ready quarterback, so he's going to be the guy who's going to be looking over the shoulder of Teddy Bridgewater all training camp long, all preseason long, all probably the first half of the season long, because unless Todd Bowles just decides to start him right away, which I doubt. I mean, the thing about Josh Allen, the thing about him is that they actually do have Tyrod Taylor out there in Cleveland, so you can start Tyrod. The expectations aren't super high for the Cleveland Browns, so you could start Tyrod Taylor, and no matter how he does, you could be like, nope, we're not going to even think about putting Josh Allen in there. He's not. They make him the third string quarterback. Just have him learn the whole year long. Don't even put him into action. There we go. All right. I think that it's going to shake out the way we've been shaking out. I mean, even John Middlecoff, the Dolphins trade up, get Baker at 4. I mean, at 5 is the Broncos. They could replace Aqib Talib, getting Denzel Ward from Ohio State. At 6 is the Colts. They're going to get Bradley Chubb to be a pass rusher. At 7 is Tampa Bay. They're going to get. That's who. And he agrees with me, saying they're going to get Saquon Barkley there at 7, going to Tampa Bay. That'd be a great fit for them. At 8 is the Bears. I mean, they can even take Quentin Nelson to shore up that offensive line, protecting their quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. That wouldn't be a bad pick. There also is a linebacker, or they can get Minkah Fitzpatrick to shore up that defense. The linebacker and Tremaine Edmonds. At 9 would be a nice pick for the Niners would be Roquan Smith from Georgia. And then at 10 for the Raiders would either be whoever the Bears and the Niners don't pick is either Minkah or Tremaine Edmonds at 8 or at 10, or even Quentin Nelson. There's 4 guys right there, all kind of for 8, 9, and 10 that could all go, or 3 guys right there, 8, 9, and 10 that can go pretty much in any order. And we'll find out what happens tomorrow. All right. So when we come back, we'll be talking about some of those guys that we don't want to overlook. Some of these guys that had great college careers that could be popping in the NFL, but they probably won't get picked in the first round. So be sure to look for their names later in the rounds, maybe even on Friday. So we'll talk about them when we get back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back. GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition. It's draft week. It is draft week here, and we're talking draft pretty much all week. I mean, we've done a little spring football stuff. We were probably going to go over some more spring football stuff at the end of the show, but it's draft week, so we're going to talk about the draft a lot. And in this segment, we're going to go over some guys. I mean, there's always guys that, or their coaches, whether it's their coaches or their schools or just gurus who don't get listened to as much. I mean, it's kind of interesting how these NFL teams don't really listen to the college coach. Maybe because they're kind of homers for their own guys, which is true. A perfect example last year, Dabo Swinney said, "Whoever doesn't pick Deshaun Watson is going to be sorry." And look at that, he gets picked. I mean, what did he drop to 7th or 8th to the Texans? And he took the league on fire before. Yeah, he got hurt. Yes, injury prone, but he'll be fine. He'll come back just fine. And you saw what he could do last year. So here's some guys. I mean, last year we had a guy. This is a list that These are guys that could be overlooked, and they might slide down the draft, but they have some of the biggest upside in the NFL. Last year, it was Alabama had a defensive tackle, Dalvin Thomas, who dropped all the way to the second round, but he had more tackles in his rookie season last year than the guy who was picked third, Solomon Thomas, by the Niners. So he had 50 tackles for a rookie, leading all defensive linemen with 50 tackles. So here's some guys that we're going to talk about. Starting off at the running back position, Justin Jackson from Northwestern up there in Evanston, Illinois, Northwestern Wildcats. They're a Big Ten team. I mean, this is a team that is always pretty interesting to watch in the Big Ten. Again, especially when they go up against the biggest schools like Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State. Because I mean, it is the private school, the smart school. So not taking anything away from the other schools, but it's a very good university. They all are. But Justin Jackson, running back, I mean, he's not the guy that you're thinking of out of the Big Ten, which that's Saquon Barkley from Penn State. But he's going to be a guy who probably can make if not the equal impact, a very close impact, as he will likely be picked somewhere in the mid rounds of the draft. I mean, he definitely something to note. I mean, he's the ninth player in NCAA history to have 4 consecutive 100-yard rushing seasons. I mean, this is a guy who probably could be more of a bell cow back versus, I mean, I already talked about how Barkley barely gets over 20 carries a game, rarely gets over 3 yards per carry over a game. I mean, he runs that nice, really speedy 40-yard time. Justin Jackson's at about a 4.52 yard dash, 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, which is faster than guys like Bo Scarborough, faster than guys like Nick Chubb, or even Royce Freeman. I know I went over a lot of different running backs. I didn't really talk about Bo Scarborough or Freeman that much, but those are both guys who could have nice NFL careers. But this is a guy, Justin Jackson, who might just be a little overlooked, maybe because he went to a school that is not necessarily thought of as a football power or as a big NFL feeder school. It isn't Northwestern, but he could be a guy who could be picked probably by a team that would have a few different backs to choose from or work around. I know if the Browns pick Saquon, they're going to have to do 3-back sets or 3 backs rotating them all out, which is, kind of the way the NFL is going these days. So it's not the worst idea. And if you want a guy like Justin Jackson, he's everything you're going to get in value. As he could be a very nice mid to late round selection, but don't be surprised if he puts up better numbers than some guys picked in front of him. All right, another guy. We're going to the defensive end now. We got Poona Ford from Texas. The NFL, yeah, they do. When you talk about measurables, all these in the NFL Combine, all these guys get hung up. All these draft gurus and the war room guys get picked up. Oh, he's undersized. Oh, he's too small. Oh, it's all about the measurables. When you watch and you don't watch enough game tape, you have a tendency to get hung up on stuff like that. But when you go watch the guy like Poona Ford, his game tape is everything you need. He wasn't invited to the NFL, and wasn't even invited to the NFL Combine, so you couldn't really get much measurables there from him at all, other than the fact that he is only 5'11", 300 pounds. But he's a guy who could definitely make a difference. Too short to play in the NFL trenches amongst those big guys, but with the more we're looking for more, when you're looking for more athletic guys, even on both the defense and offensive side, he could be a guy who could slip through and make a big splash in the NFL as a guy who could get to the quarterback, can rush the passer. We're kind of losing that. It's not a dying. It is kind of a dying breed, this NFL pass rusher. But if you want a guy who can make a stance. He was a Big 12 defensive lineman of the year last season and was quite impressive in the Senior Bowl. Does eat up blocks, very good in the running game, but he's not going to be the great inside pass rusher you're looking for. He's just not big enough. But he's going to be a guy who can definitely make a big impact in the running game or clogging up different holes, and definitely very good at shedding offensive linemen when they're trying to run block. All right, he would make a team. I wouldn't call him a first half of the draft pick, but if it didn't, if they didn't have to pick an early round pick on him, maybe like a 5th or 6th round pick, he could make a team very happy as a value pick there later in the draft. I mean. All right, next up, defensive back Rashawn Golden from Tennessee. I mean, he was the guy. I mean, I don't know if NFL teams really cared about it, but he did get a little emotional during the Alabama game last year, even a game where they were getting pretty mollywopped. He did show some obscenities to the Alabama fans, but he did apologize for it, and but he definitely has something to show for him. He's a defensive back, 6'1", 195 pounds. I mean, if you wanted to play safety, he can play safety. You want to play corner, he could play corner. You could want him to come in the nickelback package, which is probably where he's going to find a home if he gets drafted in the NFL. He'll find a home in that nickelback corner, slot corner kind of package, which, I mean, you'll see a lot of defenses doing these days. I mean, these used to be all about the base 3-4, base 4-3, whatever your team runs, but now it's all about mixing and matching, getting the different linemen in there, rotating your defensive line, rotating your defensive linemen. I mean, getting the different DBs in there, taking out a linebacker, getting some more speed as we're getting more of this horizontal passing game where you're having a lot of crossing routes, a lot of screens. You got to have more speed out there on the field, sideline to sideline, to be able to bring down a lot of these. I mean, whether it's a slot receiver or it's a running back who's going to be getting the ball not too far away from line of scrimmage and trying to run for more yardage. And that's the kind of the way the NFL is going now. We're getting back to that West Coast short passing game, run after the catch kind of thing. So if you have a guy like Golden who can be a good sure tackler, I mean, 195 pounds, I mean, it's not bad there. He could definitely be a sure tackler, but also a guy who can. I mean, that's another thing I've talked about. When I was going through my whole all the stuff like they're rotating these packages because they're also rotating these packages to get these blitz packages out of there. You're seeing a lot of nickel blitzes now these days. You see a lot of nickel blitzes where you have a guy blitzing off the corner, and this is the guy like right here, Golden, who can get on that slot right there and time up that snap and get off the line and go after the quarterback from that nickel slot, or get get into the running game where you're going to be tackling that running back behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, he has a good range down the field, but it also could show. I mean, looking at some of these measurables, he forced 3 fumbles last season and recovered 3 fumbles. So he's I wouldn't call him a cornerback purely, but he's definitely a guy who's going to be able to be disruptive in the backfield. So another guy who could drop in the draft, but would be another value. These are kind of like the value picks in the NFL in the draft here. Another guy is a linebacker from BYU, Fred Warner. There are bigger linebackers. There's more physical guys here in the draft. I mean, there's guys who are going to pop off the sheet a little more, but this guy's just kind of the whole. This is your solid linebacker. I mean, he's ran a 4.6 40. Not bad at the NFL draft for a linebacker, and I mean, he did. He's 6'3", 227. He's got the size to play in the position there. I mean, he's just not from the big name school that you're thinking of. But at BYU, he did have 31 tackles for a loss, 6 interceptions, and 5 fumble recoveries, which means he's got good hands. I mean, a linebacker who can get his hands up and be able to catch the ball even on a bad throw or jump a route or such like that, or even like you've seen scooping fumbles. He's not afraid to dive in a pile. I mean, definitely a winner. And I mean, guys, I mean, he is 6'3", so I mean, you could say he can be a big safety. He's got the speed and ability to cover in the backfield. So if you're going to put him at safety or have him come down and play that kind of that smaller linebacker, where I don't even know what they call it, what they call it, kind of that Sam linebacker where they're coming down and they can definitely become more coverage. I mean, like I said, looking for guys who are more speedy, going sideline to sideline on the defensive side. I mean, your defense is playing well when they're flying back and forth horizontally, because that's the way these passing games are going on now. You're seeing a lot of these crossing routes, like I said, seeing a lot of screens, smoke screens, bubble screens, wide receiver screens. So, I mean, end arounds, all this kind of stuff from the NFL. These offensive coordinators are getting more and more creative. So you got to think about all that kind of stuff when you're drafting. And this guy could definitely evolve into a hybrid player as he's getting more and more accustomed to the NFL offenses if whatever team gets him. I know my undisclosed favorite team would be a good little pick for them. All right, last guy on here is a tight end from Wake Forest. That's Cam Sergin. I had him written down, like, how do you pronounce that name? But yeah, no, definitely getting on the right team, getting in the right offensive system for him is the key for his success. He might not even get drafted. Seeing reports saying he might not even get drafted, but he can go as a free agent. ACC's all-time leader in owning tight ends in career receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He did catch 9 touchdowns last season and tied for the ACC lead. So he's definitely got the numbers over his 4-year career at Wake Forest. But it could be a guy that drops through the draft and would be a nice pickup for somebody looking for a tight end, as he is a 6'3", 240-pound man there, and knows how to get into those soft spots in the zone, and also can get some separation from if he's matched up against a linebacker or a safety. So somebody to look at, depending on which kind of offensive team somebody's looking for, whether it's a pass catching tight end. All right. That'll wrap it up for this segment, as we're going to talk about some more stuff with the draft. And then when we come back, I might go back to the quarterbacks, might be going over to some of the top guys at each position who's ready for the NFL. I know Kirk Herbstreit came out with the whole thing on who's ready for the NFL, the best of 2018, so we might touch on that a little bit, but we'll talk about that all after these messages.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, GSMC Football Podcast, College Football Edition, of course. We've gone over some sleeper players, some guys that might drop in the draft, might not get drafted at all, but are going to be likely impactful players as they were in college that could translate well to the NFL. All right. Kirk Herbstreit came out with his annual, he calls them the Herbies. I'm just going to give you my thoughts on how he says. I mean, he has number 1 instant impact player. Minkah Fitzpatrick is number 2 actually right now. I don't know. His stock has dropped a little bit. I don't know. Minkah, those guys get kind of beat up in Alabama, but he can play pretty much anywhere. Talk about a guy who can play anywhere around the field. Might get chewed up a little bit in the NFL. I think he could be. Sometimes those guys get a little over anxious, and they can get burned, especially for guys in the secondary. But if anything, he's going to be a sure tackler, which I like that. He has Saquon Barkley number 1, but I mean, you guys know how I feel about Saquon. I think he's a little bit overrated, if not a lot overrated. I don't know, I don't think his stats in college. I mean, you hit the 2 guys who have come out and been guys that have made impacts in the running back situation here, other than Kamara, who we didn't really hear much about in college. But Zeke Elliott, well over 20 carries a game, most games, well over 3 yards of carries, most games. Same thing for Christian McCaffrey, who never had a game where he averaged less than 4 yards a carry, actually. So, I mean, I think Saquon it really depends if he gets lucky like Zeke did. If he gets lucky like Zeke did, then maybe he can. If he gets the offensive line, maybe he can pop. I just think he's a guy who's going to be a home run hitter. He needs to be. Yeah, I think honestly the Browns picking him wouldn't be the worst thing because they have 2 other running backs that could take some of the load off of him. If he gets drafted by a team that is going to be just putting all the bricks on his back, I don't think he can take it. And he's kind of that home run hitter guy where if he gets beat up by those big linemen, and I think that I'm a big defensive lineman, not offensive lineman, but if he gets beat up by those defensive linemen, then I think he's going to get worn down quickly, just very quickly. I mean, yeah, you see he's a strong guy. He's a fast guy. I just don't know if he can keep it sustained in the NFL for as long as people think. I mean, he might be that instant impact player, but I don't think he could be a guy who's going to be in the long term make or break your team kind of thing. The other guy is Christian Kirk, who hasn't been talked about that much in this pre-draft stuff, but I think he's going to be a guy who, if he doesn't go top 10, he'll go top 15. A guy who can really get into that for a team that he needs a wide receiver and can make a big impact quickly. I do like that pick there by Kirk Herbstreit there. He's just number 3 instant impact player. But I mean, this is a guy at Texas A&M who had to go through a bunch of different coordinators. I mean, he had Kevin Sumlin as his head coach. Didn't really have a good quarterback really thrown at him. He's a great route runner, definitely an explosive player, whether it's out of the slot or out wide. So I mean, he's a guy who's got very good hands too. So you gotta like that. I do like Christian Kirk. Always been a Christian Kirk fan coming out of this, going into this draft. Best pass rusher, yeah, Bradley Chubb has obviously been the best. And the highly touted guy. The other guy he's got is out of Oklahoma is Ogbania Okoronkwo. There we go. Out of Oklahoma, the good pass rusher. Obviously, we know everything about Bradley Chubb there is to hear. He's been a guy. I mean, you've even seen him working out at his pro day with Bill Belichick and stuff like that. But you got to keep an eye on that defensive defensive tackle from Oklahoma. He did have 17 sacks over the last 2 seasons, and he could definitely be a steal there late in the first round for a team that's looking for some beef up front, and it's a guy to get after the quarterback. Day 2 steals. Yeah, Nick Chubb's been a guy I'm talking about for a while from the running back position, but definitely a guy who you can like out of there. And out of Georgia, I mean, he got definitely a lot of experience out of Georgia. Been a guy who can definitely take the rock from you, for you all. I mean, I wouldn't call him a bell cow back quite yet. I mean, he has got his sea legs definitely in the NFL, but he was a guy at Georgia where he split time with. There was a great two-headed monster with Sony Michel there at Georgia, where Sony was more of the speed back, and you had Bradley Chubb Nick Chubb is more of the in between the tackles back, where he would definitely be churning for yardage. You gotta like that if you are a team looking for a guy who can get those short yardage plays and move the chains for your team. Definitely a guy who could take the load as well when it comes to a lot of different. If you're doing carries at different packages and such like that, so he could definitely be better. All right, best overall defensive player. Yeah, Roquan Smith. He's probably the best defensive player out of Georgia. Might take a little bit. He's an undersized linebacker. He's the guy that I think might drop to 9 to the Niners. Could go earlier than that, but Roquan Smith out of Georgia watch his tape at Georgia. The guy flew around the field. I mean, I didn't see the guy stop moving most of that Rose Bowl game. I mean, he made some huge plays to get Georgia that win against Oklahoma in that Rose Bowl game against Baker Mayfield. So you got to like that if you are a team looking for a speedy linebacker right there. I mean, like I said, I was talking about last segment where you're going to have guys who are horizontal speed players where they can go sideline to sideline, they can cover linebackers, they can cover tight ends, they can get into the hole where they can diagnose plays quickly and get after running backs as they go through the line. I mean, when you're a linebacker, that's all you got to do. You got to fill holes, and you got to get tackles, and you got to go side to side and be a short tackler along the sideline too. So linebacker in the NFL is getting more and more tough as they are being demanded to do more and more each year as these offenses just evolve and continue to evolve. All right. Most overlooked player. There we go. Kirk agrees with me. Sony Michel is number 1. I think that is absolutely right. I love Sony Michel coming out of Georgia as well. This guy is, Barkley's getting the hype, all he's getting, but Sony Michel is definitely very underrated. And because of that, he is the number 2 running back in the class, I think, but the guy he was amazing. He averaged almost 8 yards per carry. He averaged 16.5 yards per carry against Oklahoma. He didn't have that many carries, but talk about a home run hitter. That's almost better numbers than Saquon himself. So I think that, Sony Michel, a guy who can make a big difference for your offense and for a team that is looking for a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, for a guy who can run those little sweep routes or a counter running game where it's a zone blocking scheme. He can squeak through those little small holes in the offensive line, and then is also very elusive when it comes to being a guy that can be hard to tackle. So definitely think about Sony Michel. If you miss out on Saquon Barkley, he's the potential steal of the draft. Sony dropping maybe to the late first round, early second round, possibly. That would be a great pick. I wouldn't mind for my undisclosed favorite team to draft him as well. All right, most explosive player, Saquon and Lamar Jackson, obviously up there. You have Calvin Ridley also up there with him. This is all Kirk Herbstreit's doing all these different little things. I'm just kind of evaluating, giving you my thoughts on them. Those guys are all going to be explosive. I know Calvin Ridley, his stock has definitely dropped a little bit. But he's got lean guy. His explosiveness is pretty obvious. He ran a 4.340 in Indy at the draft combine. So if you like a fast running back, fast receiver with good hands, I don't know how his route running is. He's a good route runner, but his hands got to be able to catch the ball. I think he went through the gauntlet and kind of had a little better fingers. So. But Calvin Ridley definitely going to find a team that wants him, and we'll see how he does. You never know. Kind of those receivers are interesting. I know we had John Ross out of Washington was a highly touted receiver in the draft, kind of got disappeared. Versus you got a guy like Corey Davis, even though coming off injury for the Titans, had a big game in the playoffs. He's a great player. So he had more guys. Best player period, obviously Saquon and Roquan Smith. They got Saquon and Roquan. Saquon Barkley, Roquan Smith, and 1-2 best player period. You also got a guy named Vita Vea from Washington. He's the 355. Vea, read up about him. He's a 350-pound defensive tackle who can definitely clog up the middle, and he can maybe even sneak into the top 10. Kirk says that. Maybe getting up into the top 10, you never know if there's a team who really wants to reach and try and get a defensive tackle who can clog up that nose and clog up that line. Because we're getting into this game where it's kind of run and gun kind of situations where you're going to have teams just run it power football into the line of scrimmage, and then obviously using that play action to burn defenses in the long run. So you got to think about that. Vita Vea out of Washington could be a big impact. I'm trying to think of the right word. Big impact on whoever team picks him. All right, best slot receiver. Obviously, Christian Kirk is that guy. Out of Texas A&M, a great route runner, got good hands, explosive guy. There's no Julios, there's no Randy Mosses in this draft. But there's a guy like Christian Kirk that can, like I talked about him already before in this segment. He's pretty darn good out of Texas Tech. Other guys, DJ Moore, Anthony Miller, DJ Moore out of Maryland can be a guy who could challenge. He could be a top receiver who could be taken. He's a guy who's definitely explosive, and out of that slot receiver spot, you want a guy who can separate and matches up well against those the slot corners or whatever. A safety is going to come down and pick him up in the whatever defensive package you're in. So could it be a guy who could exploit some defensive mishaps? All right. That's pretty much that's all. That's all he's got. I got more, of course, for you. I got 15 more minutes for you, obviously, as we're coming to the end of the third segment here on the GSMC Football Podcast, the College Football Edition. I cannot wait till tomorrow. The draft is going to be so good. It's going to be such a fun time. Only round one tomorrow, as in how we do it. It's all about the show. This back in the 70s and 80s for those. I obviously wasn't around, but I know that I've been told that this draft used to be a conference call. There wasn't all televised. It was just a conference call. You would hear about your player. My dad told me that when the Niners drafted Jerry Rice, that they heard about it on the radio. Some radio hosts like, oh, we just got a report from the Niners saying they picked a guy from. Jerry Rice went to a smaller school, but a wide receiver named Jerry Rice. I mean, it wasn't on TV. The Paul Tagliabue did not go in front of the TV and say his name. It was a conference call. All teams kind of just went on and took their turn picking. Now it's one of the biggest shows on TV. I mean, Fox is now going to be airing a simulcast of the NFL Network broadcast on their main channel, the Fox Broadcast Network. Not Fox Sports 1, not the cable channel, the network channel, Fox, their number one Fox channel. So if you don't have NFL Network or you don't want to watch the ESPN coverage of it, you can just tune into your local Fox station and it'll have it on for you tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. So we'll cover some. We're going to go back to campus for this last round. We're probably going to go back to campus a little bit this last segment. If not, talk a little bit more about the draft. It's all about this. It's all about the draft here. This is draft day eve. I went over some overlooked prospects, but so we'll probably go back to campus as we'll talk about some stuff maybe in Alabama or even around the SEC and ACC. That there is some reports coming out from their spring games that we need to get to. All right, we'll do that when we get back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back. This is the final segment of today's GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition. I have been your host, Tom Dougherty. As we'll go back to campus for a little bit here today. Maybe talk a little bit about the draft more as we finish the show up, but there is some news out of. I do have to talk about the UCF thing a little bit here. UCF, University of Central Florida, went undefeated, as we know. They even won their bowl game. And they have claimed themselves national champions. And they even made rings, and they have a banner. They unveiled their banner, actually, after their spring game. And they got rings as well as deemed themselves national champions. I mean, honestly, why not? I mean, they're not, of course, because there's this college football playoff. But the fact that there's only 4 teams you don't even allow all 5 of the conferences to get in. This year there was 2 SEC teams, which means a Pac-12 team didn't make it, and a Big Ten team didn't make it this year at all. So you're already cutting out. You're automatically cutting out at least one of your conferences, no matter what. Your Power 5 conferences, not to mention a team from, I think the Florida USF is in the American. I think USF's in the American, so they're going to be. They couldn't. I mean, how do you think they're going to get in? They were 12-0. They didn't get in. You put Alabama in, obviously 2-loss Alabama. Who, I mean, that was the right choice. They showed up and they won it all, obviously. But you have to. I think the college football. If you don't want, I mean, the guys for CFP, all these. Apologists for the CFP. They want, if you want to get this UCF people to stop kind of like calling everybody out, or stop doing this ring stuff where they celebrate an undefeated season with rings and a banner. I know that Alabama came out and kind of trolled the UCF people with a picture of all their players holding the trophy and everything. In fact, they actually have the trophy. UCSF. I say UCF. Yeah, it is UCF. UCF, they're in the what conference are they in? It doesn't want to tell me what conference they're in. I'll find it out. They definitely. I mean, you gotta let more teams in. Expand it to 8 games, 8 teams. I mean, yeah, it is one more. It's one more game. It's a lot of football for these college players, but it's one more game, and you're going to be more inclusive, and you're not going to have this stuff where you're going to have a undefeated lesser conference team get all upset and try and claim a national championship for themselves. I mean, it is kind of silly, but I mean, yeah, they had an undefeated season, and they are now saying that I mean, it's all in their own heads. Obviously, they can just do whatever they want. So it's in their own heads that the fact that they are deeming themselves national champions, even though it's clearly the fact that they are not. I mean, it's definitely Alabama. They won the CFP college and national college football playoff. So, I mean, yes, they did win all their games, and they won their bowl game last year. But see, I think that if you're UCF, you're kind of living a pipe dream here. But I mean, bring it on. I mean, bring it on. You are starting a conversation. You're making everybody talk about it, and the fact that it's not inclusive enough. The fact that you're now having this college football playoff, you're trying to be more inclusive than how it was before with the BCS. Now you're having a college football playoff where a 4 seed like Alabama was the 4 seed last year, can win the national championship game, which they did. If UCF thinks they can be the national champions, why don't you give them a chance? Put them in the playoff. Make it a 6-team playoff. Make it like a NFL playoffs where you have a bye. The first 2 seeds have a bye, and you have two like wild card games like you do in the NFL. I mean, that's kind of how it works, right? Then you have the divisional round, then you have the final. I mean, those 2 teams that have a bye. I mean, is that kind of anti-college? We're going to kind of make it closer to the NFL rules, the fact that you have a 6-team playoff now. Because if it was a 6-team playoff, would a CSF even have gotten that? Would CSF, I mean, UCSF, would they even got in UCF? If UCF would have got into that 6-team playoff, if it was 6 teams last season? I don't know. Where was their ranking at the end of the year last year? I think they were 5th or 6th, so it would have been close. But that really have to do with it. I mean, they do come out with more rankings after the bowl games. After all the bowl games. So it's going to be interesting to see how they. I mean, that's all preseason rankings. I want the rankings from last year. If they had from week 16 last year. So let's see all the CFP rankings top 25 from last season. I mean, UCF was 12th at 12-0. 12th. So even if they made it an 8-team league, 8-team playoff, if you go off their rankings, they wouldn't have made it. Anyways, Penn State, USC, Auburn, Wisconsin, Miami, Washington, all ahead of them. Ohio State, all ahead of them. All of them. Yeah, you went 12-0, but you went 12-0 in a really weak division. There's a 3-loss Auburn team was ahead of you. They're in 7th because their 3 losses were against tough teams, against tough opponents, and they beat Alabama. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that they're thinking that they would have a chance to beat any of these teams. Yeah, you guys are lucky you're up all the way to 12th. But, I mean, if they want to claim it, they can claim it because they were undefeated, whatever. But if they want people to get them to stop it, to shut up, then maybe give them a chance to play. Make it a 16 or 8-team league. Throw them in there. Let them get beat. And then they'll be quiet, probably. They'll be unveiling banners and deeming themselves national champions. It's just funny. I mean, I think the governor of Florida even did something where he signed a thing, kind of a silly figurehead kind of thing, where it made it seem that they were the national champions. Ugh, it's just kind of ridiculous, honestly. All right, back to campus a little more. I know that there's been reports saying that Nick Saban isn't disappointed with. I mean, I kind of talked about it in the last show on Monday. That Nick Saban wasn't really disappointed with Jalen Hurts' performance in the spring game. Yeah, I bet you their offensive line versus their defensive line the disparity is quite different. So Jalen was running for his life a lot of the time in that spring game. So I mean, I don't think that they're really taking much from that, especially the fact that Tua Tagovailoa didn't even play in that game as well due to injury. He's working on that hand injury. All right. Out of Florida, I mean, Florida's got an interesting season coming up for them. I mean, Dan Mullen's first season at Florida. There is, I mean, they're working that title. I mean, I'm seeing reports saying that, I mean, they're working that CFP title or bust kind of thing. I mean, we're in the SEC, and you still got even tough competition coming out of the ACC. Florida has to kind of figure themselves out. I mean, they have to win more games, obviously, no matter what. But kind of figuring out who their quarterback's going to be is a mystery. And then Dan Mullen kind of working that and getting into the position where he can get into a college football playoff, get Florida back to the prominence. I mean, they haven't been there since it was a guy named Tim Tebow took them to back-to-back national championships. Obviously, they had Urban Meyer as their head coach. Urban now up in Columbus at Ohio State. So he's doing his thing already, and he's going to be probably not missing a beat at Ohio State as he loses his quarterback as well. JT Barrett's going to the draft. But, I mean, Ohio State, they know Urban Meyer knows how to recruit. So that's the thing with Urban Meyer. He's a master recruiter and has never really had an issue. So Dan Mullen, we'll see how he does. And I know he's definitely stepping up to the challenge coming over from Mississippi State, where it's definitely a little lower profile. Definitely lower profile over there for being a Bulldogs head coach, coming over being the Gators head coach in Gainesville, where, I mean, you don't even get a chance to prove yourself even that much. I mean, Jim McElwain coming in after that scandal there in Florida had to come in as a kind of interim head coach, got kept on as the head coach, and wasn't able to really do much other than kind of just prod along through the SEC East, and he got ousted quickly. I mean, it was the boosters, and the thing about those kind of schools is it's all about the boosters, and it's all about the fact that if you can't win, you can't make those guys happy, they're not going to keep you around very long. All right. I mean, that's pretty much it out of campus. I mean, we go back to the whole deal with these NFL draft. I mean, we got even more prospect profiles to talk about. I'll probably do that. I mean, even on Friday, if some of these guys are still on the board, a lot of these guys are not going to get picked in the first round. So I'll probably talk about that on Friday. But, I mean, we can't wait. We're coming to the end of the show here. We cannot wait till tomorrow night in Dallas. The coverage will be all over. Like I said, it's going to be on Fox. The simulcast, the NFL Network, will be on Fox. Obviously, if you have NFL Network, you just watch it on there. If you like the ESPN guys with Tom McShay and Mel Kiper Jr. over on ESPN, you can do that too. So there's options all over the place, and we'll be deciding who goes where coming up on Thursday. I mean, I think they call it the NFL draft, but it's like there's an official name for it. It's like the NFL selection committee meeting or something like that. Selection meeting is, like I said, it used to be on via a conference call, how they used to pick all these players. Now it's quite a spectacle, and they're expected to have, I mean, I know 500,000 people showed up last year in Philadelphia for the draft, and like this year they're expecting a little over that. I think like 270,000 people coming down to Arlington to go to the draft. I mean, there's going to be a lot of fan experience. So it's basically going to be like a fan fest as well. I mean, I think I'm reading there's going to be 25 football fields worth of fan stuff to do, whether it's different activities or meet and greets or what have you. But it's going to be a frenzy down there in Dallas. I want to say I wish I could get down there, but I'm busy doing shows for you guys. So I think I'm trying to convince to do maybe a draft simulcast during the draft, a little show during the draft with Jesse. We'll see if we can get that set up. But everybody, make sure you're tuned in and see where your favorite college players are going to be headed. See if your favorite team is going to get the guys you wanted. It's going to be all up for grabs starting tomorrow. And the Cleveland Browns have been on the clock for a while. So, I mean, whether the Giants are going to be on the clock quickly after the start of the draft, the Browns are going to have to pick. I think it's going to be Josh Allen. I really do. I'm not going to be able to talk to you guys about it. Until Friday, so when everything has already been decided. So we'll definitely be gushing about what went down on Thursday night. We'll see where Saquon went. We'll see where Josh Allen went, and we'll see, of course, where Baker, Josh Rosen, and Sam Darnold go. I think honestly, if Sam Darnold doesn't get picked first, he's getting picked second. He's going to the Giants, unless the Giants really absolutely want Saquon Barkley. But I mean, I think they would want a quarterback. That's their quarterback they like, and putting him behind Peyton Manning would just seems like the no-brainer that it is. So until Friday, everybody enjoy the draft. Enjoy the first round of the draft. It's going to be a good one. As like I said, it still remains in mystery. We're still seeing reports out there that pretty much anything could happen tomorrow, and anything will happen. So until Friday, enjoy the time, and we'll talk about the draft and have our little fireside chat come Friday morning, and we'll know everything that happened and transpired tomorrow night. So everybody have a good time. Until then, see you later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.